Can I have some energy in the room? Woo! My name is Ashley Rosa. I'm the Vice President of Training and Engagement here at RE/MAX. I have the pleasure and honor of introducing you to an entrepreneur, someone who is an expert in sales and marketing, someone who's going to blow your socks off today, and he has an interesting career. He started off as a music promoter, and he grew into a success by putting in the hard work. He became the Chief Marketing Officer at Ramsey Solutions, and he has worked with Buffini & Company for 10 years now. Let's give it up for Bill Hampton. Woo!
Thank you. Thanks, Ashley. Great job. How y'all doing? Good, good. I gotta tell you, it's my first time at R4, but what an event. And I've lived in Tennessee for the last 28 years, and let me tell you what people in Tennessee would say to you about R4, about being in a room with this many high producers, this many people who are like-minded with you and think like you and want to be the best at their craft around this energy. People in Tennessee would say this to you about R4, that if this environment doesn't light your fire, then your wood's wet, all right? You got to dry it out. You got to get excited about R4. I tell you, as I walk through here, I had the privilege of reading your co-founder, Dave Liniger's book on the plane last night on the way in. And as I read through that book, I thought about how he loved to say that the more you learn, the more you earn. And as I walk around R4 and think about an event like this, the whole purpose of this is so that you have the ability to learn more, so that you can take what you learn here and go back and apply it to your business, do better in your market, and live a better life. And I love it when you see a founder's vision fulfilled at an event like R4. So that's why I love being at places like this, and I'm excited to be here with you today. Let me ask you a question. Did you know that being an entrepreneur, a real estate entrepreneur, can be hard sometimes? Sometimes? I mean, let's think about your last 5 years. Really, let's think about this. You had a little thing called the pandemic. That wasn't easy. And then out of the pandemic, the market got really hot. There was a shortage of inventory, and rates went through the, offers went through the roof, which sounds exciting and fun unless you were on the losing end of a lot of multiple offer situations. And even if you weren't on the losing end, it was exhausting, right? And then rates started going up, people started holding their money. And now the media, which is known for always wanting to be accurate and correct, is saying that the 6% commission is gone forever. Isn't it great that people think that you're supposed to work for free? I mean, your last 5 years has been crazy. And I know this because I grew up in the real estate industry. My dad was a realtor for 40 years. I brought his card here. I found his business card. He was a RE/MAX broker in Clarkston, Michigan for 14 years. And as a kid, I knew if the market was hot or not by what he drove or picked me up. It was either a Cadillac or a Ford Escort. And that's how I knew if the market was good or not. But I learned, but I realized that being an entrepreneur, being a realtor is hard sometimes. I tell you what, I saw a video the other day. And when I saw this video, I thought, oh, wow, that perfectly describes the life of an entrepreneur, a day in the life of an entrepreneur. So I wanted to show it to you real quick, and I want to see if you agree. Let me know. Does that describe the life of an entrepreneur? Look, I gotta tell you, that is a funny video. I got a kick out of that. But I do wanna say, it does not have to be that way. Your life as a realtor does not have to go from sheer joy to sheer terror multiple times a day. You can win in this business with no chaos. Your life does not have to look like that girl ziplining, but there's some things you gotta do. And that's what we're gonna talk about today. I've had the privilege the last 10 years to work with what I consider to be the greatest coaching and training company in the US, and that's Buffini & Company. And because I've gotten to work with Buffini & Company, I've gotten to meet with and study, and I love studying top performers. I've gotten to study people who are the best at their craft. And here's what I found. As I talk to these people from all over the country, and they've had levels of success at all different levels, but I've learned that you start to see characteristics, repeatable traits that these people do that all top performers do. I've learned that success leaves clues. And those clues are what we're going to talk about today. Those clues are the fundamentals of success. The fundamentals. I said I was reading Lineker's book last night, and in his book, this book, The Perfect 10, it is his fundamentals of how to be successful in business and life. I think as you look at the way that people succeed, they have the fundamentals mastered. They've committed to those. And I'm not talking about people who come on the scene and they win quick for a year. I'm talking about people who win long term. The people who just flash on the scene, I call them chasers. They're just looking for the shortcut. They're looking for an easy way. But I'm talking about people who show up every day and do the work and win over time. They've committed to the fundamentals, and those are the fundamentals we're going to talk about today. Before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about my story. And I want to do that because if I'm in your seat and I've committed an hour of my time to hear somebody talk, I kind of want to know that they know what they're talking about. At least that they've had some experience and they're not just someone who's learned how to make a good video on social media. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my story. 1995, I was driving and moving from Atlanta, Georgia to Nashville, Tennessee. I was 24 years old and I was broke. I had no money and I was trying to figure this thing out. And I'm flipping radio stations and I heard best way I can describe it is a hillbilly on the radio talking about money. But in a weird way, I understood it for the first time in my life. See, I grew up in Michigan, so when we hear people with a real Southern accent or a country accent, we listen just for the entertainment. It's just interesting to us. But I was listening going, man, I'm understanding what this guy's saying about money for the first time in my life. I listened all the way to Nashville, Tennessee, got off the exit and saw this billboard, and I said, oh my gosh, that's the guy I've been listening to. I understand what he's talking about. He's got his own billboard, and at 24, I thought, if you got a billboard, you've arrived. Like, you must be smart. And so, true story, I pulled the U-Haul into the apartment complex, went upstairs, and I called Dave Ramsey on the radio. I got through because back then he had no listeners, and I think he was just happy to talk to somebody, so we talked for a long time. And at the end of my call, he invited me out to a little class he taught called Financial Peace University. He taught it live at the local Holiday Inn, and it was a course about personal finance. And I went out and I joined, and Dave and I became fast friends. I started teaching his classes for him. I started helping him out. And a few years later, he called me and asked if I'd come by his office. He wanted to meet with me. So I went by. I met with Dave, and he said, Bill, I want you to come lead my radio division of my company. And I said, Dave, I love you. You're my friend. I love what you teach. It's changed my life. I'm applying your principles about money. But man, I don't know how the signal gets from the studio to the car. I've never thought about it. I didn't know how radio worked. And that's when he said something to me I've never forgot. He said, Bill, that's exactly why I want you. Because if you knew radio, if you were a career radio guy, you wouldn't believe we could accomplish what I'm getting ready to tell you I want to accomplish. And he laid out his vision for me of how he wanted to win in the radio business. And he was exactly right. If I'd have known radio, I'd have told him all the reasons it couldn't be done. But I didn't know radio. I just thought, hey, this sounds fun. Dave likes to fight. I like to fight. Let's jump in and see if we can change radio. Let's see if we can change the radio industry. And so for the next 13 years, that's what we did. We locked arms, and we just started going about telling people about us, figuring out as we went. As my friend Brian Buffini says, we put our best foot forward, and then we just did it better. And then we put our best foot forward again, and we did it better. And in 13 years, we changed the radio industry. We grew that little radio show that had about 30 stations when I started to over 500 radio stations. When Fox Business Network launched, we launched in their prime time slot on television. They have over 15 million listeners a day to that show now. It's the fourth largest podcast in the world. The fourth largest podcast in the world. That class, Financial Peace University, we took millions through that class, through churches and corporations and military bases around the country. And guys, the reason why I tell you that is what we're going to talk about today. The 6 fundamental principles of success are exactly what we did there. We just committed to them, and we did them every day. And when you study companies, I said success leaves clues. When you study great, successful people or companies, you're going to find they committed to the fundamentals. Take RE/MAX, for example. What do they always say? You're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. So what do? They come around you. They provide you all these great resources and tools. They put you in situations like R4, where you can learn from the best and learn best practices. They believe in the experience and wisdom of learning from those who have it. So they bring you together like this. RE/MAX consistently takes those fundamental principles that they believe in and they pour it back into you, because that's what successful people and companies do. They commit to the fundamentals. One of my favorite books over the last few years, if you've not read it, I'm telling you, I know you guys are all readers, get this. It's called $1 Trillion Coach. This is the leadership playbook of Silicon Valley's coach to Steve Jobs and the heads of Google and the heads of the largest companies. He was an old football coach from Pennsylvania. He wasn't Harvard or educated. He was just a gruff guy who understood the basics about life and business and began coaching all these companies. And what Bill Campbell called the fundamentals, he called it his first principles. He said, look, we can agree, we can all have different opinions, right? But principles you generally agree on. First principles, he says this: in any situation, there are certain immutable truths that everyone can agree on. So an example would be like gravity, right? Like if I wanted to climb to the top of this rafter, because I believe, my opinion is I can fly, well, the principle of gravity is going to win that, right? It doesn't matter what my opinion is. Well, there are certain principles that apply to business and success. And the first principle of success is the fundamentals. It's the fundamentals. So we're going to jump into those today. Before we do, I want to warn you about something called the disease of knowledge. This is important because these principles are simple. The disease of knowledge says you can't learn what you already know. There's going to be things that we talk about today, and you're going to go, I know that. I know that. I know that. But I'm going to ask you 3 questions. I know you know it, but do you do it? Honestly, do you do it? Number 2, have you mastered it? And number 3, do your results prove that you've mastered it? So So you can't learn what you already know. If you think you know it, do you do it? And you got to be honest with yourself. Are you doing it? Have you mastered it? Do the results prove that you've mastered it? All right, let's jump right in with the first principle of success, first fundamental of success, and that is you got to know your audience. I'm from Nashville. I've been there 28 years, Music City. Number one rule of entertainment is know your audience. Well, you have to know your customer. You got to know them. When I started working for Dave, it was 1999. I was in the radio business. We didn't have computerized CRMs. We didn't have fancy databases. We had a phone book of radio stations called the M Street Radio Directory. This was just a thick book of every radio station in the country, and I had the privilege of cold calling through that phone book. And I would call program directors, and the program director of a radio station is someone who used to decide, they'd set the lineup of the station. And so I would call them and I would tell them about Dave, and I would tell them how great the Dave Ramsey Show was and how wonderful we were doing in Nashville, and I talked about us and I talked about us. And I was getting no traction. Nobody would listen to me. And one day, a guy said to me, he said, "Bill, you're never going to get Ramsey on the radio with that pitch you're giving." And I was like, "Man, listen," his name was Phil. I said, "Phil, please help me. I'm dying here. No one's listening to me. I'm trying. I'm doing the work. What do I need to do?" And he said, "Program directors care about their job. And if they replace somebody on the radio with Dave and Dave doesn't do better than them, or if they were making the station money and Ramsey doesn't make them money, they're going to lose their job. So you better start telling radio stations how Dave Ramsey's going to make them money and help the PD keep his job." Guys, what a gift he just gave me. He told me exactly what I needed to do in order to get Dave Ramsey on the radio. And let me tell you something. Your customers will tell you the same thing. When you listen to them, they will tell you exactly what's important to them. They will tell you exactly how to market to them. I'm going to tell you, that one decision was so important. I would tell you, for those of you that have heard of Dave Ramsey, I will tell you it's the reason you've heard of him is that decision right there. When we started doing that, everything changed. Remember, when we were just talking about us and how great we were and how wonderful we were, maybe in your case, how many homes you've sold, how many transactions you've done, how much, that's not what anybody wanted to hear. You're not promoting you and your success. You're promoting the problem that you solve for your customer. Remember that. Think about that when you're talking to your customer. What problem do they have that I am uniquely positioned and prepared to solve for them? That is what they're wanting you to do right now. I've got a good friend in Nashville. His name's Jon Acuff. He's an author and a speaker, and I was talking to him about this one day, and he gave me this really clever little quote that I've never forgotten. I'm going to share it with you. He said, "Bill, just care about what the people," I forgot it. Just care about what the people you care about care about. Care about what the people you care about care about. So simple, but there's a lot in that statement. So I'm going to ask you, do you really know your customer? If you're thinking about your customer and if you're solving their problems, they're going to listen to you. And if you're not, you're going to lose them. Let me give you an example of that. So my wife and I, in 2016, we sold our home in Nashville for $1.3 million. We used a realtor to do that. We were custom building a home, and so we sold this home, moved into our custom build. In 2021, we sold that home that we custom built for $3.75 million. We used the same realtor, okay, for both of these transactions. And then we needed somewhere to live, so we bought a house, paid cash for a $1.5 million home. So that's about $6.5 million in transactions with one realtor in 5 years. Did our realtor, did she make some good commissions on those sales? Let me ask you guys, it's been 2.5 years since we bought in 21, 22, 23, 2.5 years. How many times do you think we've heard from that realtor since we bought our house for 1.5 in 2021? Zero. 0 times. Is it not baffling to think that a client would give you this much business and then you don't contact him again? Why? Because life got busy, life for her, she's doing a lot of deals. But guys, guess who we're not going to use again? That realtor. And I think it's because I work with so many high-performing people like yourselves that would never do that, right? You'd never do that. And so I realized, no, clients should get treated better than that, right? People should be following up with you. That's how we feel known. And what's man's greatest need? It's to feel known. But she did not do that, so she's going to lose a client in the process. So know your customer. See, she met the transactional need, so she got a commission check. But if she had met our emotional and our transactional needs, she would have created an advocate. I would be up here right now advocating to you on behalf of our amazing realtor who knows us so well and keeps in touch and stops by and sees us and knows our family. But instead, I'm talking to you about a realtor that we're not going to use again because we didn't feel known. Guys, you have to stay in touch with your clients. Whether they're doing a deal with you or not, they need to feel known because they're more distracted than ever. And if you don't stay in touch with them, they're not going to think about you. And it's not because they don't like you, it's because they're distracted. Never in the course of human history has our attention been more sought after and fought over than today. Look at some of these stats. Google Ads, for example. 5 years ago, Google Ads was a $40 billion business. Today, it's a $180 billion business. Google, while we're talking about them, they have a $1 trillion valuation. They're worth $1 trillion. Meta, or Facebook, they're worth $700 billion. Let me ask you guys, what product do they sell that makes them worth that much money? What product? I love this quote from the Center for Humane Technology. It says, the reality is social media apps are free to us because we are their product. Our tendencies, our online behaviors, our interests, they're studying us so that they know what we like, so they can market it back to us, so that we stay on their app and we click on their ads and they make money. They're not evil, that's their business. But we need to acknowledge the fact that our attention is being fought over. That's why you need to stay in touch with your customers. Look at some of these other stats. Look at this one. The average American spends at least 2 months a year watching television. How low does the bar have to be that if you just cut that to 1 month, you're crushing it? Crushing it. Look at this one, makes me laugh. The average American checks their phone over 344 times a day. And you know all the realtors said, hold my beer, those are rookie numbers, right? Rookie numbers. 600, 700 times a day. Guys, we're distracted. We've got a computer in our pocket. We're being fought over. Your customers are too. And if you're not staying in touch with them, if you don't have a system that allows you to send them regular updates and follow up with them, they're going to forget about you. They're not thinking about you. All right, fundamental success tip number 2, and that is you got to show up ready to play. When you show up, it's game on. You got to be ready to play. I love the book Chip and Dan Heath wrote called The Power of Moments. And in The Power of Moments, they talk about a college student's 4-year experience. And they say that in that 4-year experience, 40% of what they remember comes in the first 6 weeks. So they've gone through college, they've graduated, and they look back over that 4-year experience, for some of you 5 years, 6 years. 40% of what you remember is going to come in the first 6 weeks. What that tells me is that experiences and relationships, they're not universally remembered. They're remembered in moments. And those moments are front-loaded. They're front-loaded. Guys, that first appointment you have with a customer, it's the most important meeting you're going to have with them. When they look back over your relationship, that's what they're going to remember. And think about it, your relationship with a customer is not a 4-year experience typically between the time you met them to the time you sold them a home or they bought. Oftentimes it's a month, 2 months, so it shortens the time that you have. 40% of what they remember about you might come in the first minute or 2. What does that mean? It means if someone cut you off on the way to that meeting, if you were on the way there and your son called because he forgot his lunch again and you had to run it back to him at school, or something, or you got a call that upset you, you got to get over it. You got to show up. You got to be all in with that customer, because that's what they're going to remember about your relationship. Experiences, they're front-loaded. All right, principle number 3, you got to lead with the core need. Lead with the core need. So when I left Ramsey's in 2012, I spent 13 years with Dave and had a great experience there. When I started working with Dave, here's what he said to me. He said, "Bill, I'll offer you $36,000 a year." Now let me tell you, in 1999, even then that wasn't a lot of money. $36,000 a year, but he said, "I promise to share with you whatever you bring in." Well, when I started with Dave, we were a $2 million business. When I left, 13 years later, we were a $75 million business. Dave never changed my deal. And so he was very generous with me, and I was able to earn multiple 7 figures for multiple years in a row because of the way that he set it up, and he honored the sales guy. He honored the guy that helped him grow it. But after, it came a point where I just kind of lost my passion for what we were doing, and I was ready to try something new. And so I told Dave I was moving on, and I got a little 1-room office in downtown Franklin, Tennessee, where I live, and I would just drive to work there every day and think about what I wanted to do in my next chapter. And I started driving by a couple selling peaches on the side of the road out of an old green pickup truck. And man, these customers would get these peaches out of the back of the truck, and they got them in a little brown paper bag. And I'm a marketing guy and a branding guy, and this was just so Americana. I loved the whole picture of what I was seeing every day. And so I approached that couple and I said, "Hey guys, I'd love to invest in your business." And they were like, "Invest in what? We just sell some peaches out of the back of a pickup truck." And I said, "Well, I think it could be a little more than that, applying the fundamentals of success, what we're talking about today." And so I joined that company and I started selling peaches. There's a picture of me. Now remember, about a year earlier, I'm running one of the largest media brands in the country, and now I'm selling peaches on the side of the road. I've got my peach outfit on. I grew the beard because that was my peach look. I got the fanny pack on to hold all the cash. And those are my kids who are 16 and 12 now. But we started selling peaches. Guys, when I approached that couple, they did $26,000 in sales. Now let me tell you about peaches. Peach season is 13 weeks long. That's it. It's not a whole year. It's 13 weeks. It's mid-May to mid-August. So they did 26,000, which you think about, it's not bad. A couple $1,000 a week, 13 weeks, $26,000. That next summer, applying what we're talking about, we did $660,000 in peach sales. That's a lot of peaches. I bought that Grand Wagoneer there because that looked peachy, like we went all in, right? And I love that. But listen, that's when I learned this principle about you got to lead with the core need. And this is really important for you that have been in this business 10, 15, 20 years. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I hired a guy when I was there who was the best salesperson I know. He's smart, he's funny, he's got great energy, he tells wonderful stories. And I only sold peaches for a year, and then I moved on. Basically because you work every day of those 13 weeks. And I had five kids, and so they were off of school during the summer. Dad was working every day. When they went back to school, Dad was free. It just didn't work. So, but this guy I hired, he stayed on for several years. He sold a lot of peaches. But he called me one day and he said, Bill, peaches aren't selling. Do you have any ideas? Anything we could do to get the needle moving here a little bit? So I said, let me get back to you. So I thought about it. I thought, why do these customers go see my buddy? Why do they go? They go for, well, before I say this, let me tell you this. When you sell peaches, you also sell pecans. If you've been to any peach farm in Georgia or Florida or South Carolina in the South, you'll see long rows of little teeny trees. Those are peach trees. Then you'll see long rows of big, huge trees. Those are pecan trees. So you sell peaches and you sell pecans. So I was thinking, why do they go see my buddy? They go for peaches and pecans. Is there any other reason why they go? What is their core need? They want fresh peaches and they want really good pecans. So I called him back and I said, Rick, listen, man. And I gave him this idea about sending everybody a code, and if they use the code, they get a discount and other things and on their peaches or pecan purchase. And he cut me off and he goes, Bill, man, you and I think so much alike. I've already done it. And I was like, you've done exactly what I told you to do? He goes, well, pretty much. He said, I sent them all a code, and I said if they use the code, and if someone comes and if enough people use the code, then I'll give them a free t-shirt or a coffee mug. Let me ask you, my buddy sells peaches and pecans. The last time I checked, he didn't sell t-shirts or coffee mugs. He wanted to do something a little different. He'd been selling peaches for 8 years. He was tired of selling peaches. He wanted to try something new, but it wasn't moving the needle. Guys, I want you to think about the core need of your customer. Why do they come see you? Because probably you're really good at helping them buy or sell a home. You're probably really good at helping them solve a problem that they have. Some of you have been doing this a long time, and so you're trying really hard to be creative. You're trying really hard maybe to do some funny things or something else. Be really good at meeting the core need of your customer. Be the best at helping people buy or sell homes. That is how you're going to get ahead in this business. Lead with the core need. All right, success principle number 4, the fundamentals. You've got to believe. You got to believe in your product. So as a consultant, I'll have companies call me and they'll ask me to come in and help them with their sales teams. Maybe their sales are down and they want to give them a boost, they want to grow. And there's 2 things I want to do. Every time I go in to meet with these companies, I want to ask them 2 questions. Number 1, I want to know if the sales team believes in the product that they're selling. And number 2, I want to know if they believe in their comp plan. That when they sell something, are they going to get a nice commission for it? Now, contrary to what the media is saying today, I believe that realtors get a good and well-deserved commission when they help someone buy a home or sell a home. And I don't think that's changing anytime soon. So we can continue to say, you're going to continue to get a nice commission. What did Dave say today? He said, you know, the realtors that aren't very good, they're probably not going to do very well with this new ruling. But you guys, you're RE/MAX realtors, right? You're going to do just fine with this new ruling because you guys know how to win in the marketplace. So we're going to set that one aside. I think you guys get a decent commission for the work that you do. But I do want to ask you this. I do want to ask, do you believe in your product? And the product you sell is not homes. The product you sell is you. It's you. It's your service. It's your communication. It's your professionalism. It's your knowledge. It's your relationships. Do you believe in the product you sell? Guys, we talked about it when I started my talk today. The last 5 years, it's been hard. It's been up, it's been down, it's been fast, it's been slow. And I've talked to a number of you, and it's done a number on you. And I know that some of you question. I know in a room like this, there are people in here who are going, do I still have what it takes? Do I still believe in my product? Man, can I get up and do this again? And I'm not going to answer that question for you, but I do want to tell you something a good friend of mine told me. I've got a good friend in Nashville. His name's John Deloney, and he's got a great podcast and radio show. He's a mental health therapist. And here's what John says that you need to do when you start having negative self-talk, especially about you. He says you got to get your thoughts out of your head, and then you got to challenge them. You're never going to win the argument in your head. Never. Some of us try to sit around and we keep it right here. No. When you're having negative thoughts, guys, you got to get it on paper. Write it down. And then you got to get some distance from it. Take a day or two. And then come back to it and then ask yourself, is that true? Because oftentimes what I find is people go, nah, that one's not true. And there's context to that one. It gives you, what I can assure you is it'll give you a fresh perspective about the things that you're telling yourself. So you got to believe, and if you're struggling with that, it's very normal, especially with the last few years you've gone through. I just want you to get those thoughts out of your head, write them down, and then challenge them. All right, fundamental of success, number 5. You got to go all in. Now listen, we're in Vegas, so what a more appropriate thing to say than all in, right? I know it's been overused, but I want to tell you that I've got a different perspective on it. I want to tell you the story about why I've got a different perspective on it and tell you what it means to me when I say go all in. Now, gee, I told you about working for Dave. I told you about selling peaches. Now I'm going to tell you another crazy little job venture I took. So you might have surmised from me being up here with you that I've got a lot of energy. I do. What you might not know is I love change. I love progress and technology. So when I stopped selling peaches, I started a consulting company. And one of my clients was a 50-year-old Amish shed builder. They built backyard storage sheds. Amish, like horse and buggy Amish. One of my clients was a 50-year-old Amish shed company. I love change. I love progress. I love technology. So when that company called me and said, Bill, we'd like you to shut down your consulting business and become president of our Amish shed builder, what do you think I said? I said, of course, because the Amish love change, right? So I did that. And it's funny, that guy was awesome, super successful dude. And if you zoom in on that picture, you can see why he was so successful. He knew who to have driving his buggy, right? But I promise I did that. I spent about 20 years there, one 3-year period, and we had a lot of success. Listen, that company, applying the things that we're talking about, listening to our customer, solving their problems, leading with their core need, believing in our product. Guys, that little shed builder, we took them from $5 million to just under $20 million in right at 3 years. Now, operationally, we had major problems with that business, and it was a grind, and it was difficult. But we grew it applying these principles that we're talking about. But it was when I was with that company that I learned that 5th principle of fundamental of success. You got to go all in. Because a lumber mill in Minnesota, big lumber mill, asked me to come tour their facility. I bought a lot of lumber from them. And so they wanted to come show me how everything worked. And I'm glad I went because it's awesome. I don't know if any of you have ever toured a lumber mill before, but man, this is an impressive operation. You know, you show up there, it's in the middle of the woods, and they take all these trees and they drag them into this building and they run them through this conveyor belt and they cut these logs into wood chips and then they cut them into wood shreds. And this particular mill, they were making what's called OSB. It's strand board. It's like a manufactured plywood. And so they would spray these wood shreds, as you can see there, onto a big metal plate. And they'd be stacked about that high. And then another plate would come down, a huge plate, and it would press those wood shreds down really, really small, whether they were making a 1/4 inch or 3/4 inch or inch thick OSB. And it would hold it there for a couple minutes. And then it would release, perfect piece of OSB would be there, a machine would come over, grab it, and it would put it on a rack. And then it would do it again. Press, hold, release, grab it, put it on a rack. Press, hold, release, grab it, put it on a rack. Well, as this is happening, and it's cool, I'm enjoying watching it, I see a truck backed up to the press, and the back's open. And I'm thinking, well, the wood's gonna go on the truck. Why is it going on the rack first? And so I asked the guy giving me the tour, I said, hey, why aren't you just putting the wood right on the truck? And he said, well, Bill, that's because we tried it once, and when the truck caught on fire, we said we should probably let it cool first. We should probably put it on a cooling rack. So I said, all right, hold on. You got to tell me more. There's got to be more to that because there's a lesson in there somewhere. I know it. And he said, well, Bill, when you press something and hold it for that long, it creates so much energy that it'll catch fire if you don't let it cool first. If you press something and hold it. For those of you that love sales, is that not a lesson for how to win in sales? I like to say, I tell all new salespeople this, if you want to win in sales, do 1 year of work in 90 days. That's what pressing and holding looks like. Do 1 year of work in 90 days. First of all, there's no competition. No one else is working that hard, but that's how you rattle something loose in the marketplace. You got to attack it. That's what it looks like, pressing and holding and not letting up and doing it over and over again. That's how you catch fire. Now listen, there's a second lesson in that. Some of you, if you're in a rut or if you're new to this business, you need to do 1 year of work in 90 days. You need to press and hold. That's how you're going to win. Some of you have been doing this a long time, and you've been doing 1 year of work in 90 days for years. You don't even know what a break looks like. And guys, you have to hit the cooling rack. You got to relax. If you don't hit the cooling rack, you're going to burn up. And some of you are doubting yourself, and you're not believing in the product you sell right now, and you're struggling, and you have anxiety. Listen, hitting the cooling rack looks like this. Just rest. You're going to be fine. Your problem is not working too hard. you don't have a problem, you don't have a bad work ethic. You gotta know when to hit the cooling rack. I love what Ben Franklin says. He says, he that can take rest is greater than he that can take cities. And it's so true. And guys, the last fundamental of success I want to talk to you about today is you gotta be a pro. You gotta be a pro. There comes a time in your career when you have to make a decision. Are you gonna be an amateur or are you gonna be a pro? My favorite author is a guy named Steven Pressfield. If you've not read Pressfield's War of Art, get that book. He's written several, but War of Art is fantastic. He wrote another book called Turning Pro, and I love how he described the difference between amateurs and pros in his book Turning Pro. He says, the sure sign of an amateur is he has 1,000,000 plans and they all start tomorrow. They all start tomorrow. How many of you know somebody like that? I'm gonna quit drinking so much tomorrow. I'm gonna get in shape tomorrow. I'm gonna go on my diet tomorrow. I'm gonna get serious about my database. I'm really gonna start knowing my customers tomorrow. And all along, the pros are showing up every day, doing the work, doing the grind, doing these fundamentals, committed to mastering the fundamentals. And the amateur says he'll do it, but it's tomorrow and something usually comes up. Guys, more than ever, today, people who want to buy or sell a home, they need a pro. They need a pro who cares about them. They need a pro who promotes. They need a pro who markets. They need a pro who cares. And I want to start with this today, and this is why I want to talk about something you can do to be a pro in your market. I learned this from Buffini, and I think it's why it's so important that you start today on being a pro. Because there's some big things coming down the market, and I stole this stuff from Buffini and Company. I want to share a little bit of it with you today, and Brian is going to talk about it in depth tomorrow in his session. You're going to love that. But there are two things that create demand in your world. Two things create demand. Number one, household formation, and number two, employment. Household formation and employment. What do I mean by household formation? Let's look at this stat. This is basically how the U.S., this is all the U.S. stats, but this is how the U.S. breaks out generationally, right? You got your Gen Alpha, you got Gen Z, you got millennials, Gen X, boomers, and then the silent gen. But I want to focus in on the millennials there, and the reason why is the millennial generation covers about, give or take, 26 to 40 years old, okay? Household formation begins at 26 years old. What that means is household formation. It means they're moving out of mom and dad's, maybe they're moving out of the college dorm, and they're going on their own, or they're getting married, or they got a job, they're getting their own, they're doing that. But they're starting out on their own. When most people start out, do they buy or do they rent? They rent. Most of us started out renting, okay? Especially in today's market, they're renting. So it starts with rent. For the last 4 years, rents have increased steadily, significantly. So, you guys have all heard it, right? When people are paying a lot in rent, what do they say? I'm paying a fortune to be a renter. I'd just as soon pay a fortune to be a homeowner, right? So, household formation starts at 26. First-time home buyers is at 35. In that 9-year stretch, 26 to 35, there are 45.5 million people in that range, 26 to 35, in their household formation, first-time home buyers. Guys, that number, 45.5 million, is the largest it's ever been in U.S. history by a ton. It's by a lot, okay? So what do you have? You have 45 million in, oh, and last thing, they're working, by the way. That age group, over the last 20 years, the unemployment rate has averaged about 5.8%. Today, it's 3.5%. So that tells us that they're working. They're paying a fortune in rent, which creates demand. They have money, but they're holding it, right? Because they don't want to jump into a 6.5%, 7% market. But you wait until that rate dips below 6. And it's going to be Katie bar the door. It is going to be massive. And only the pros who have been doing the work, who have been preparing for that, are going to be ready, who have been building and cultivating relationships with their customers. They're the ones that are going to be able to take advantage of what's coming, probably late Q3, early Q4, Q1 of 25. It's coming. And that's why you got to start today. It's so important that you start to be a pro today, because I love this quote from John Wooden. He says, when opportunity knocks, it's too late to prepare. You can't decide to prepare when the opportunity comes. You got to be preparing now. And that's why I just want to tell you real quick about this incredible campaign that Buffini and Company has called the Do It Now campaign. Guys, the Do It Now campaign, now stands for no chaos, own the listings, and win market share. You can win in this market with no chaos. You can do it by owning the listings. And by doing that, you're going to win market share. This campaign positions you to be a guide, a trusted guide to your clients. One thing, I'm going to take you through one thing they did real quick, and then we're going to wrap. But this is amazing to me, and I tell you what, the people that are using this campaign right now, they're getting unbelievable results. They are helping you be a pro. They are helping you serve your clients. Buffini and NAR and about 6 other organizations have compiled all this research, proprietary research, and they've learned the 10 reasons that people are moving in 2024 and 2025. The 10 reasons, whether it's family ties, they need a bigger space, they love the rate but not the house, it no longer fits their needs. Legacy real estate, they want a vacation home. By the way, the vacation home people, just know this about vacation home people, they're buying that vacation home not to have 2 homes. 35% of people that buy vacation homes, within 1 year, they move permanently into that vacation home. So remember that when you're selling people vacation homes. They have lots of equity, lots of choice. They want to upgrade the neighborhood, time to downsize, these different things. Well, what they've done is they've created custom items of value that you get to send out to your clients for each one of these buyers. So if it's someone who wants to be closer to family, they're going to send you information to send to them that specifically markets to that buyer. If it's somebody who's focused on legacy real estate, they're going to send you information 1 month specifically focused on that buyer. Email, social media posts that you can do, marketing mailers, other information. This is so cool. How many of you are really involved in social media, but maybe you don't love doing the videos? Videos have been hard for you, right? They're going to send you a video of Brian speaking directly to your customer about you. And they're going to send you the script. So if you want to do it, you can load a teleprompter on your phone and you can say what he says, but you can do it. He doesn't care. You do it, he can do it. If you don't like to do it, he'll do it for you. But guys, let me ask you something. My realtor here, if she'd have had a system like this, where she didn't have to think about it, she could just show up every day and apply this, I'd have been hearing from her. And I'd been up here advocating for her, not telling you that I was not going to use her again. We're busy. It's a crazy time in real estate. We need systems and processes. I loved how Amy Lessinger said today, she talked about Starbucks, and she said, how can all these Starbucks, have teenagers running their shops all over the world? Because they have a system, and the system keeps them on track. They don't have to think about it. The Do It Now campaign is your system to stay in touch with your clients, and so you can let them know that you care about them. Buffini is at booth 108. Do yourself a favor. Go by and hear about it. I'm telling you, this thing is working. It's working big. It's one of the best things they've ever done, and I think it would help you too. So guys, listen. Winning in life and business, like Dave Liniger says in his book, is about the fundamentals. It's the fundamentals of success. Know your audience. Show up ready to play. Lead with their core need. You got to believe in your product. Go all in and be a pro. That's how you're going to win. And I hope you have a great 24. Start being a pro today. Don't be like the amateur that says he's going to start, but it's always tomorrow. And I hope to see you around here over these next couple days. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.